Okay, this is going to be a very interesting book for you. This is a book about worldview, specifically about the Western worldview, the context that most of us have been raised with, and the way that the lens through which we look through and see the world. I think it will be an interesting book for you to go through and look at. There are some chapters in the book that are assigned that I think are important for you to look at and see, and some other chapters that you can pick from. I think it will be a good reference and resource for you to use later on in your studies in this graduate degree, and then even later on in your professional life. But this is the book about worldview, really about context. I think that most people don't understand that they have a worldview, that they use a worldview to understand and perceive the world, that they're given a worldview. That's what culture is all about. They don't probably understand, certainly individualistic Americans think that maybe they all have their own worldview, personal one, but we all share a worldview. And that's what this book is about, and helps you kind of understand where it all kind of sort of comes from. Maybe as a child, you were familiar with maybe the Three Musketeers, or maybe Robin Hood. That's what Alexandre Dumas, the French writer, was famous for inventing for us. I like this quote of his here on this first slide. Unfortunately, in this world of ours, each person views things through a certain medium, which prevents his seeing them in the same light as others. Everybody sees the world through a lens, a medium. And so we see this world through a world view, a view of the world. And so that's what the book is about, helping you to understand that. And as somebody studying the Christian faith, that's a real important way to understand Western civilization, because it has been shaped by Christianity. Very much so. And so this is going to help you. This book is going to help you tremendously to understand that. Now, the book is kind of organized in a way that takes you through the history of worldview. You see from the cover the story of the worldview from Rome to home. It's going to help us understand the context part of this course. The Western civilization that we all share in is unique, but something that we all need to kind of understand is that because of capitalism and liberal democracy that have spread throughout the world, because of our successful economy, and because of even historically because of the British Empire, we find capitalism and democracy in all parts of the world. And so we see that parts of this Western worldview in lots of places. It's not just something that we find in Europe and in the United States and parts of the empire like Australia. But there are some unique parts of the worldview. I put on the list here pragmatism. That's something that Americans invented. This very practical, very efficient way of doing things. Christianity, of course, is a foundational part of the Western worldview. Scientific rationalism. We want to do things in an efficient way. We believe in science. We believe in a logical way of solving problems. We want to go to the doctor and find a pill, find a cure for what ails us. We believe that science can solve our problems, very much so. And again, as I've just said, liberal democracy, we think that people are created free. We believe that everybody's equal. We haven't always practiced that, but we believe that. And so we believe that even people who believe in American exceptionalism believe that our place in the world as Americans is to take that democracy, that liberal democracy, and spread it throughout the world. That was part of the Cold War. And then capitalism and free market economy. That's something that has been spreading. Even the communists in China are practicing a free market to some extent and are doing very well in their capitalism, so to speak. These are all parts of this worldview this way of thinking, this lens through which we see things. And so the book here that you read, or parts of the book that you read, will help you kind of see where these all kind of started, these ideas, the way we see the world, the way we define the situation that we're all in, the taken for granted. Maybe that's a good way to think about it. The taken for granted reality that we all kind of surf around in. And so this is a really good, it's a short little book that you can flip through and find some good reading to help you kind of start to understand what this is all about. So I think you'll enjoy this, and I think this will help you understand the world that we kind of live in and help you to relate to other people who may not always share that worldview. And so you can understand that the people think and act the way they do, not because there's something wrong with them, but because they're just coming from a different context than you are. So this will help tremendously with that. Despite that, what I just said, when you go to other parts of the world, you're going to discover that other parts of the world have assimilated this Western worldview. We find, certainly since the end of World War II, we find liberal democracy all around the world. We find since the fall of communism at the end of the Cold War, the fall of the Soviet Union, certainly, we find liberal democracy taking over most of the world, or at least trying to do so, and certainly capitalism doing so, even into communist China. Now, Christianity is not a Western worldview invention, but versions of it are. And so you find within the Western worldview, you find Roman Catholicism, Protestantism, and then here in America, what I'm calling our entrepreneurial Christianity, where you've got people inventing new versions of Christianity every other day. Every shopping center has its own strip center, has its own mom and pop Christian church in it. So that's, Americans love to invent their own version of things and makes things bigger and better. And so that's what we've got here. Every billboard's got a new church sign on it. And so that's an American contribution, an American version of Christianity because of our American worldview about things. Marketing and selling and improving and that pioneer spirit that we have. That's what we've contributed to Christianity. Anyway, that will help you. Learning that in this short text here, it will help you understand why we do Christianity the way we do it here in America, and why it seems strange to people in other parts of the world. So in this book, as in the other texts in this course, all the other texts, there's some chapters that are assigned that you're going to read. You're not going to read the whole book, but some chapters you'll read. And then there are other chapters that you just will get to pick out because they are of interest to you. And the best way to find out if something looks interesting to you is go and kind of flip through the chapters. Maybe start with the conclusion and find out what's the point of this chapter. What's he trying to teach in the chapter? What's the point of it? And see if that looks interesting to you. Not just the title, but look at the point of it. When you read books in college, and you may have already figured this out, don't start at the beginning and go to the end, but flip through the chapter and see, look at the title, the subtitles in the chapter, look at the conclusion, look at the beginning. Those are the bookends of the chapter, and see what's the point he's trying to make and how is the author trying to prove that point in the chapter. See what looks interesting to you. When you read a chapter, do some active reading. Try to answer some questions in some notes you're making as you go through the chapter in an active way, rather than passively just kind of going through and reading it and hoping you catch something along the way. Go through with a mission in hand. So when you read this book, I want you to figure out how to better understand the context that other people are operating under. People from other societies around the world have different ways of seeing the world. Again, everybody doesn't have their own private worldview, but people from different societies have different worldviews. And so we're here in the West, in America, and we have a Western worldview and kind of an American version of that. If you go to nations in Africa, you're going to find they have a different worldview. If you go to people in Eastern Europe, you may discover that they have a different sort of, maybe kind of Western, but a little different worldview than you have. People aren't weird. People aren't strange. People aren't bad. They're just operating with a different context. You go to India and people are just different. They're not bad. They're not lazy. They're not slow. They're just not Western. They have a different way of operating, a different way of defining reality. And if you figure that out and understand that, it helps you to interact with people in a more healthy way, a more productive way, and a more Christian way.